I'm Andy. I'm the District 7 council person and currently have the honor of being the vice mayor of the city of Pasadena. And boy, I love these cheerleaders. I love the good attitude. Must be all the coffee you've had. It's wonderful to have you here. I've missed seeing you all. We did do a district meeting a few months ago in Grant Park. We had talked about public safety, and for those who were there, we had the police dog doing amazing things. So welcome back. We have a bigger group today, I guess. By the way, the sun's in my eyes, but so I have my hat on. But it's wonderful to see all of you today. We're going to get right into the program, and I will have a brief city update after our special speaker and before the raffle. So without further ado, by the way, we are getting more pastries. I heard some complaints that there weren't enough pastries, so the chef has put another batch on, and those should be around out in maybe about 20 minutes. So without further ado, obviously we're incredibly excited to have the Rose Parade come back. Can we have a round of applause for that? It's such an iconic event and really defines, I think, the beginning of the new year. I missed it last year. I watched the digital version, nowhere close, is the real thing. And I know my mom, who's not here tonight, but they are 85 years old and they live right near the Valley Hunt Club. And she insists every year on taking my tickets for her. That's her Christmas gift. And she never gets bored of the Rose Parade. So she particularly was excited about the Rose Parade coming back. So I want to introduce a representative from the tournament, Bryan Stewart. Bryan serves with the Pasadena Tournament of Roses as in the development office, which focuses on the Road Parade participation, corporate sponsorships, and evolutionary partnership programs. I'm curious what that is. Maybe you can share more. Before joining the tournament, Bryan was VP of Communications at One Legacy, a not-for-profit organ and tissue recovery organization serving Los Angeles. I won't read all this other stuff. You're just too awesome to come on up, Bryan. Tell us what's going on with the tournament.
Sure, you bet. Thank you, Andy. Appreciate it so much. Thank you. I tell you, it's so wonderful in the sun. I had this flashback to all these years that I was decorating floats when we'd be down at Rosemont Pavilion, freezing our butts off, and then the sun would peek out over the roof of the barn, and it was just, so much better. So if you're in the shade, don't worry, the sun's going to be on you soon. So my name is Bryan Stewart. As Andy said, I am part of the parade development office at the Tournament of Roses. And my experience with the tournament actually began about 20 years ago. And before I go farther, when I talk about the Rose Parade, I like to do a little show of hands, and I want us to be honest with each other, because I'm going to ask you a question not about the Rose Parade, but just about parades. So when I speak in front of a group, usually there is a contingent of parade geeks and parade Grinches, okay? Just parades, right? So let's be honest. How many of you don't think about the Rose Parade? We know what it brings to our community, we know what it brings to the world, but just the concept of a parade, right? How many of you are parade geeks? Oh my God, I can't believe it. The marching bands, people in silly costumes, right? Okay, let's be honest with each other. We're neighbors. How many of you are parade Grinches? Where you see a parade and you're like, really? Really? I don't know. It's kind of corny, okay? All right. I could totally understand with this audience if you are shy about raising your hand high and proud, but I know there are a few of you in the audience. But here's the thing. For a moment, take away what you know about the Rose Parade or whether you're a geek or a Grinch. The thing about parades that I learned over my 20 years of first involvement with the Donate Life Float and now as part of the Tournament of Roses is it is one of the most pure communications between an audience and a presentation that you can ever imagine. You know, there's a contract, right? People who are in a parade are preparing. It takes money and time, resources, blood, sweat, and tears to bring the kinds of presentations, especially in the scale of the Rose Parade. They are working all year round, sometimes bands for 2 years to come here to Pasadena. So they're putting a lot of effort in, but they know they have an audience. A huge audience. And on the other side of that contract is the audience. They are getting their tickets early. They're sleeping overnight on the curb. They're freezing in the morning. They expect to be charmed or inspired. If you can get to inspired, fantastic, but at the very least, charmed. And so there's an expectation on both sides that I, as the presenter, my message will be received. I will be heard. I will be listened to. And then on the other side, I will be charmed. I will feel hopeful. So I just think that's the most beautiful thing about the Rose Parade. And when I joined the Regional Organ and Tissue Recovery Organization in October of 2001, literally the first day on the job, someone handed me a letter written by a lung recipient who had decorated floats for 12 years for the Auto Club. And he had the idea to present a very complex issue, organ and tissue donation, in the most celebratory event in the world. And I read the letter, and instantly I could see this could be an incredible way to reposition organ donation from being scary and associated with death to being seen as an affirmation of life. And it wasn't easy to do. We knew our first day, first time we're going to be in the parade, we needed to be gentle. People weren't ready to see a phoenix rising from the ashes. And so for several years, we were keeping things very calm, nature scenes and parks and things like that. But over time, the audience rose with us. And before you know it, we had that phoenix rising from the ashes. Kites, hot air balloons, things that lifted you up. So as it passed by, mind you, it's not a 30-second spot. A float in the parade is passing by at 2.5 miles an hour. You got to keep it quick. So we simply wanted people to see it and say, that is beautiful. I don't have anything to be scared of if I'm part of something this beautiful. So that was my experience. And over the course of 11 years, leading the Donate Life Float into the parade. And of course, now it's in its 18th year and is an institution in the parade. And I can tell you, I just feel very humbled to have been such an important part of creating a presentation that year after year stands the test of time. So I know that many of you in the audience over the years have seen that float pass by, have paid respects to the families, the transplant recipients that are part of that. And I just want to thank you because you give them a lot back for welcoming that presentation in the parade. So I never thought 20 years ago that I would actually be part of the Tournament of Roses. So it's been wonderful to take all that experience as a float participant and bring that into the tournament on the staff and to help other float participants make the very, very best of their presentation. So many of you know this, but the Tournament of Roses is a volunteer-run volunteer-led, staff-driven organization, 935 volunteers in the bylaws, those are the numbers, organized into 32 organizing committees. And altogether, they contribute 80,000 volunteer hours, which are required to present the parade every year. Without that volunteer support, the Rose Parade wouldn't happen. It would simply be too expensive. We also support our community with grants. Over $3 million in grants have gone out over the past 40 years. And then for this year, we're very excited to have the Rose Parade come back. I know you missed it probably more than we all missed it last year. There's no comparison. We were all in the same boat. So it's great to have it come back. And of course, we were worried because when we knew that we were all systems go as of last June, we didn't know where we would be right now, but we were fully committed to mounting a full Rose Parade on live television on New Year's Day. And we're going to be doing that. This will be the 133rd year, 88 parade entries. And of course, we probably aren't going to have quite as many people on the parade route this year. I know that Sharp Seating isn't, for instance, they're not erecting grandstands south of Del Mar. And that's understandable if the demand isn't there, but we are putting measures into place, and I'll talk about those in a moment. All of our TV broadcasters are back with us. We have ABC, NBC, Hallmark Channel, Univision, RFD television for you agriculture buffs, and also KTLA with their commercial-free coverage, which we all appreciate how much energy they put into it every year. So this year's parade, the theme, Dream, Believe, Achieve, was originally the theme for the 2021 Rose Parade, and there was actually a subhead to that, celebrating education, because the Tournament of Roses president, Bob Miller, has a very long career in public education, primarily in community colleges. So obviously with the transformational events that we've had over the past couple of years, we maintained that theme for 2022 when everything rolled over, but we've broadened the meaning of that beyond education, of course, to honor scientists, frontline healthcare workers, essential workers, first responders, et cetera, people that have helped us make it through this very difficult time. So what is the impact of COVID-19? Well, it won't be, obviously, we're all wearing masks, so it's an ongoing issue, and we have taken great care and spent a lot of energy working on the logistics surrounding making sure it's the safest event possible. So within the controlled areas, primarily around TV Corner with the grandstands where people have to show their tickets and get in to get their seats. We will be having essentially turnstiles where you have to show proof of vaccination or a negative test within 72 hours of the parade. Same thing for the game, same thing for Float Fest. There will be a system set up at the Rose Bowl Stadium 72 hours prior to the Rose Parade for people that want to go down there, show their proof of vaccination, get the wristband early. That will speed access into the controlled areas if you have that wristband and can take care of that rather than having to do that the day of the parade. So anyone that can take care of that, that will be very, very helpful for all of us. Also, and by the way, I said the word Float Fest because that's the new name for post-parade. I'll come back to that in a moment. We did have to cancel a couple of very minor events, but you may have noticed if you've driven by the Tournament of Roses, the tournament house, there is a large tent, a 60-foot by 80-foot tent that's erected on the north lawn. And in fact, it's been so handy, people have been saying now that they want to have it there every year. It's very easy to host events in the North Lawn tent. And most of our events would be held indoors, and larger committee meetings, pretty much all committee meetings, are all going outdoors. But thanks to heaters, I wouldn't say it's balmy and comfortable, but it's doable. Like I said before, we were committed to mounting a full parade, and to our great pleasure, we only have one less float than we did in 2020, which is quite an achievement. We are missing our international bands this year. The international bands simply couldn't participate, and it's really unfortunate because they were slated for 2021, no parade. They were slated for 2022, couldn't travel, so they are again rolling over to 2023, and hopefully the folks that were freshmen when they initially got into the parade will be able to be in the parade by the time they're seniors. And then our equestrian units, actually we have one more than we did in 2020. So it's going to be a very full parade, including a wonderful mid-parade performance featuring the Louisiana Office of Tourism. They're going to have a jazz band, and forgive me, I didn't watch the latest season of American Idol, but the winner, he's going to be on board. Someone must know his name. Okay, all right. I can see what we're watching. Fair enough. Okay, so we also have all of our sponsors. Pretty much all of them are back on board and extending for future years. So there's still a lot of confidence in the future of the Rose Parade and companies that want to be part of this, either as float participants or outright sponsors. And then Andy was curious about what are evolutionary partnerships? Great question. So one vision we had a couple years ago when I came to the tournament was that sponsorships are very important, but they need to be done well. You know, the days of putting up banners and calling it a day are long, long since over. So one of the ideas was that the first mile of the parade is a very special segment of the Rose Parade. Every year, we're putting up about 40,000 grandstand seats, and they're visible from very early on. That's a stadium, so why not treat it like a stadium? Why not give it the pageantry of a stadium, a sense of place like a stadium? So, and the thing is when you create that, we're all very familiar with stadium deals, right? SoFi Stadium, Bank of California Stadium, etc. And this could be a place that could be owned and beautified at the same time. So thanks to One Legacy, the spirit who spearheads the Donate Life float every year, we brought that vision to life, and you will see it come to life. And what the most visible part of that will be, you've all seen the tower, the press stand 1 at TV Corner. I've heard it likened to an oil derrick. That's not a very flattering picture, and it certainly isn't very Instagram worthy. We're going to be wrapping it in super graphics. Okay, it will be wrapped, it will be beautiful, it will be the epicenter of this international event. That it is, but it will be that visually, not just functionally. You'll also see some other pageantry around that area, and we're adding a second Rose Vision board, the large display board. There's already one on Green Street at South Orange Grove. We're going to have one up opposite the West Colorado, 450 West Colorado grandstands as well. So just adding some capabilities for visual presentations. The other thing is, as I mentioned, Float Fest. So for many, probably decades, post-parade has been post-parade. Then the idea is, well, it features the floats and it's fun. So why not call it Float Fest? We already have an Quest Fest and a Band Fest. Float Fest just made sense. So Float Fest will be inaugurated in this year, and notably, the footprint of the event is going to be a bit different. Normally, it starts out on Sierra Madre and makes that 90-degree gradual curve. It will not extend beyond Washington. So at Washington, it will make a left turn going straight north up Washington. So it'll be an L shape rather than a Y shape. So that's new. That's different. Same fun, though. That won't change. And then let me wrap up by telling you, I'll try and paint a quick visual of some floats that are going to be really great for you to look out for in the parade this year. A couple have not been announced yet. The first of all is a salute to America's band directors. The Michael D. Sewell Foundation, which is named after a man who is legendary in the band director community nationwide, they organized a group of band directors to bring a float into the parade that will be trailed by a band of 260 band directors. So they're actually represented by every state in the union. And interestingly, these are band directors, so they probably haven't performed all that much, and they certainly haven't marched all that much. So I have a feeling Peloton got a lot of business while they were getting in shape to march 5.5 miles while they're playing instruments. So that should be interesting. But the energy of this group is fantastic. The float is absolutely beautiful. Wetzel's Pretzels, a local company with offices overlooking Colorado Boulevard, in the parade for the first year. And theirs is going to be a fusion of a California road trip and beach party. It'll be fun. The Masked Singer. Okay, obviously no viewers of American Idol here, but Masked Singer? All right, we got some fans. They're going to be in the parade. They're going to have some authentic costumes on board, as well as some very large replicas made of our natural materials. And of course, the men in black will be on board protecting the secrets. So that will be entertaining. How many of you, let's go old school, Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom, right? Marlon Perkins? You can hear his voice, right? The cadence of his voice. Well, Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom will be in the parade thanks to RFD Television, which is rebooting the show. And they will have a very large fluorograph of Marlon Perkins on the float, so we can all pay tribute. Two more. The San Diego Zoo Wildlife Alliance. So they were called the San Diego Zoo Global, but now they are the centerpiece of a worldwide alliance of conservation organizations. They will have float riders from all over the world, so we will in fact have an international presence. And their presentation will be absolutely beautiful and led by a parade of puppets, kind of like Lion King. So they're going to have 6 flamingos, 6 giraffes, a rhino, and a lion that takes 4 people to walk. Now, the lion will only be visible between Green Street and Pasadena Avenue because they can only carry it for 15 minutes, and then they've got to stop because it's heavy. So anyway, if you're in the first mile, you'll see the lion. And last but not least, double top secret. How many of you like Reese's peanut butter cups? Okay, so this is not going to be the Reese's peanut butter cups float. Reese's is actually creating Reese's University. So this is going to kick off a 3-year campaign that they're going to take to television, to retail, and college football games all over the country. They're creating a mythical university with cheerleaders, a gate to the university, a stadium, and a mascot named Cuppy. So do you remember in Greece when Danny and Sandy were having that argument at the drive-in? Remember in the background when you've got those like marching hot dogs and Coke, soda cups and things like that? Well, this is basically a humanized peanut butter cup. And so the Reese's University Fighting Cuppies, yes, that's their official name, will be leading the way. And I have a feeling this may be one of the most entertaining floats in quite some time. And of course, the Donate Life float will be in for its 18th year. And I just have to say that, as I said before, I never would have imagined going from, building that program to actually being part of the Tournament of Roses. I'm honored to be part of it, to be part of Pasadena, to be speaking with you here today, and we can't wait to welcome you to the streets of Pasadena and for you to welcome the parade on January 1st. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Ryan. If you were kind of not sure if you really wanted to win parade tickets today, now I'm really pumped up. So that sounds great. And I did want to call out, you mentioned Bob Miller, who's the president of the tournament this year. Many of you may know of Bob. Bob was a longtime executive at PCC just across the street. And so we're excited for Bob finally to have the chance to lead the parade. Terrific person and a longtime active member of Pasadena. And you mentioned the Wetzels. Rick and Elise, if you know them, they live over on San Pasquale. And not only did they start Wetzel Pretzels, but another of my kids' favorite food, Blaze Pizza. Anyway, great to have Pasadena folks represented. I did want to provide a brief update on the city, but before I do that, I wanted to acknowledge Ken Hargraves from Caltech. Ken, can you come up for a second? Maybe just greet folks. So obviously, Caltech is a very important part of our community here in District 7. If you like anything science and kind of solving some of the world's greatest problems, you're at the center of that here at Caltech, and Ken helped set this up. So maybe just a quick hello for all of us.
Hey, everybody. Thank you, Andy, very much. Appreciate that. Welcome to Caltech. Nice to have you all here today. And, typical Pasadena, just beautiful weather, right? So that stuff about the parade is really exciting. And I think we're going to be doing this here every year. And so, anyway, welcome.
Thank you, Ken. And also, I wanted to recognize my field deputy, Pam Thyrett, who makes this happen. Actually, essentially runs the district. I told her I'm just the face and she gets stuff done. So thank you, Pam, for putting this together and for all the work you do for our district and serving our constituents. So I had a few notes just about what's going on in the city, and I promise not to bore you because I know I'm between you and the raffle and maybe new pastries coming out of the oven. So a couple of headlines. Our library, as you know, has been closed the last several months because of some seismic issues. That was kind of a surprise, which I can't quite figure that out. But it is a iconic building. It's not just an important piece of architecture and part of the original Bennett plan, which defines our civic center. But it's a place of a library, which is a real community center. We are committed to figuring out how to preserve that building. We had an update a few weeks ago, and I challenged the city staff not just to restore this building, but re-envision what a library is. That library is 100 years old, and you can imagine how a library worked 100 years ago is very different than what we think about a library today. So it's a little bit of, now that we have an opportunity, which we didn't expect, to do some work in the library, let's make sure the library and that facility is benefiting the community in the greatest way possible. I wanted to mention we are in the process of putting guidelines together to keep the on-street dining. I don't know about you, but I love it. It adds to the vibrancy of our community and our, my cheerleaders in the back. But we do think as these become more permanent, there probably could be a consistent level of higher quality. For instance, I think Magnolia House is terrific, and it really adds to the kind of ambiance in the street. There are other, I would say, attempts to have on-street dining that looks a little bit like a camping trip. So I think we want to figure out a balance of something that looks a little bit more consistent. We're working on guidelines along that front. You may have seen, it was in the press recently. I'm happy to announce that Erewhon Markets is coming to South Lake in the Borders building. I was happy to have had a number of meetings to convince them that this would be a perfect neighborhood for that type of use. And I also think that kind of investment that they plan on making will be transformational to Lake. And as someone who walks, and you probably see me walking all the time, I recently did a walk from my house in Madison Heights, then into up Fair Oaks, and then through Old Pasadena, and then across Green and down South Lake. And I am very concerned about the retail activity in Old Pasadena. And it struck me that actually South Lake feels actually more vibrant now than Old Pasadena. And I feel like with Erewhon that we're going to see a new vitality coming to South Lake. And I really look at that as kind of our neighborhood area and our neighborhood shopping and community area. So I'm excited about South Lake, but still have some concerns of what's going to happen in Old Pasadena. Let's see. I did want to mention crime. Actually, overall, crime is down in our city, but there has been more gang activity, mostly concentrated north of the freeway. Poor 13-year-old boy got killed by a stray bullet a few weeks ago, literally in his own bedroom. And I can't imagine anything more terrifying for a family. You think about gang violence as maybe gang members, and this is someone literally video gaming in their own house. The police are aggressively, trying to pursue what happened there. Our gang violence has ticked up as a result of, I think, COVID, people having more idle time. And apparently I understand for our police chief that there is a little bit of transition in gang leadership. And then there's kind of a reassertion of gang kind of hierarchy, and that's resulted in more activity. So we're fortunate in District 7 not to be kind of in the facing that directly, but as concerned community citizens, we have to think about the safety of our whole city. And I know a lot of effort is going on into looking at gang intervention and also, frankly, appropriately providing additional enforcement. Over 250 illegal guns have been seized off the streets this year. And it tells you that, gun violence and gun ownership is an area of concern and been unfortunately nationally on the upswing. I also, not to be Debbie Downer, but just a few blocks from here, a pedestrian was killed by a reckless driver on Allen going south at San Pasquale. The 20-year-old driver was just arrested yesterday for vehicular manslaughter, or actually vehicular homicide, which is tragic, certainly for the 33-year-old woman who was killed instantly by the driver who was speeding through a stop sign. And certainly the 20-year-old young man's life will be changed forever as well. And I think there's, a message for everyone. We all drive, and please be mindful of pedestrians and runners. We're a city that prides ourselves in our walkability, and that is a contract both between the drivers and the pedestrians to make sure that we're all safe. As someone who walks 30 or 40 miles a week, I walk defensively, and I think please do not be looking at your phones when you're crossing a street. I make eye contact with drivers to make sure they see me, even when I have the right of way. I have a 16-year-old boy who insists on running at sunset. But now he looks like a Christmas tree with all sorts of lights. He's very embarrassed, but I just tell you, in a city that, has drivers and people are coming back, in many cases driving faster than they should, it's really important that we're all very vigilant and very aware. let's see, the two last items. Just this last week, we had a transition in city leadership. Steve Mermel, our longtime city manager, retired after 30 some years of being our city manager, which is, I think, a little bit of an unexpected transition. We are very fortunate to have been able to recruit a extraordinarily capable interim city manager by the name of Cynthia Kurtz. And if you're familiar with that name, she was our city manager many years ago. And I love Cynthia, and I think she'll do a great job for us in the interim. She has previously retired, so she's not a candidate for the long-term position. She's not allowed to be, but she's certainly able to support us in the next 6 to 12 months while we go through a complete search. And I've come to know and respect Cynthia over the many years, and confident in her abilities to lead us on an interim basis. Our police chief is also retiring after the parade. We convinced him to stay on and manage the complexity of the parade. So we will be under Cynthia's leadership running a search to find a replacement for John Perez, who has many, many decades and decades of service with the city. And we are seeing a little bit of what I call the great resignation, if you've read of that. People have kind of gotten through COVID and being a municipal executive during COVID has been incredibly difficult. And I think folks who are eligible for retirement are taking advantage of that. And honestly, if they can retire, and many of them have generous retirement programs, they can either play golf or go get a part-time job and have two incomes. So I don't hold it against them for moving on and transitioning with their own life plans, but it does leave some gaps. The last item I would like to mention is some state legislation, in particular SB 9, which was recently signed into law by the governor, will be effective January 1st. It really removes single-family zoning from California cities. So single-family lots will now be able to be lot split. So whether in one lot you'll have two, and each one of those lots will be able to create duplexes. So what historically has had one home could have four homes. The city of Pasadena was not a fan of that. We are very committed to increasing and producing affordable housing, but we don't think that needs to be at the cost of destroying our single-family neighborhoods. So we have kind of objected to that, and Mayor Gordo wrote letters with other mayors saying that this is essentially an overreach. We are a charter city. That means we get to write our own laws, and in this case, the laws have been written out of Sacramento, so they're being forced upon us. And we think that there's, once again, an overreach, and we understand the housing challenges, and as you can tell, we are building a lot of housing. I don't think the housing crisis or housing challenge needs to be addressed through the rezoning of single-family neighborhoods. Today, you already can build in your a accessory dwelling unit and a junior. You can actually put 3 units on your house, and I think that has actually worked out reasonably well. But the idea of creating duplexes, 4 units on one, I think is a little concerning for many of us. With that, I also wanted to announce an effort that Madison Heights is doing to create a landmark district. I have a sign in front of my house because I'm a supporter of landmark districts. I've also think architectural integrity of neighborhoods is really important. So I look at the landmark district as a way to do 2 things. One is to make sure when new development is happening in your neighborhood, or someone is redeveloping their home, that it's architecturally compatible with the neighborhood. Doesn't mean you can't redevelop your home or remodel your home. It just needs to be consistent with the architectural style. So I think that is nice because so many of our neighborhoods have such great architectural integrity. So argument number 1. And argument number 2 is obviously with SB 9, there is concerns about what will happen with the densification of these neighborhoods, and a landmark district actually is one of the few ways to slow down the conversion of single-family residents to quadplexes. I wanted to introduce Glenn Camhi just for a second. I think Glenn has been playing a pivotal job in organizing Madison Heights, and first, Glenn, you and John Latta and others, I want to thank you all for your leadership and give you a moment at least to address the group for 30 seconds on this effort.
Thank you. Pastries are there. I'm done. All right. Yeah. Thank you, Andy. Two quick points, and then I'll be sitting there with John Latta. We can answer questions. One, SB9 doesn't have any affordability component, so it's not about that. And in Madison Heights, such units are very unlikely to be affordable. Whereas currently with ADUs, there are incentives from the city to make an ADU affordable. So we already have that ability here. Two, we started this effort before SB9. This is really about, as Andy said, the historic architecture of the neighborhood. It only applies to what's structural to a house that's visible from the street in the front. So any part that's visible from the street. So it doesn't deal with landscaping, doesn't deal with interiors or rears. You can add an ADU. You could add a second story to a home, even historic, as long as it's in keeping with the house. So there's a lot of leeway. Our website, there's a sign up there that has the website. It has a lot of information, and you can reach us and get any questions answered. Thank you. So many of you have already signed who are in the Madison Heights district, proposed landmark district. Please mention it to your friends and neighbors. We still have about 100 signatures to go to get approved. The city is going to expedite us once we get it done, but we really need to get more signatures. And most people are signing once a neighbor talks to them about it. If you have any questions, let me know. I'll be over there. And thank you. Thank you, Andy.
Thank you, Glenn. And obviously volunteer driven. If there are other parts of District 7 that is interested in organizing a landmark district, please contact my office, and we were happy to educate you as to what that process includes. It is petition driven, and you need to get a majority of residents in the landmark area to support the landmark district. And it does add another layer of review in terms of what happens. So that's plus and minus, right? Because anyone who's tried to get something approved by the city is probably already complaining about the review. But this is kind of I'd say the cost benefit of having a landmark. We make sure that the evolution of your neighborhood is consistent with the architectural integrity of where you are.